When it comes to Japanese cinema, there are many movies that could be explored from many styles and stories. You have the classical monster movies, you have the entire anime industry, you have the samurai movies, crime movies, or horror movies, but here's the thing. When you talk about a genre from Japanese cinema, you instantly have in a way a reference in your mind and you get a faint idea about what you might see. When you are talking about samurai movies, or as they are known in Japan as jidaigeki movies, it is in a way impossible to not explore the works of one of the greatest film directors in Japanese film history, Akira Kurosawa. He made so many movies that were a heavy influence on the Western cinema culture, his movies not only being a blueprint for many American movies that are actually remakes, but with cinematographic style and his stories, he influenced many future filmmakers to adopt the way he uses narrativity or different concepts from his movies and evolve them, getting recognition even today for his vast and beautiful filmography. One of those movies that are truly loved by the cinema fans, and probably one of the first movies that a fan will see from Akira Kurosawa's filmography, is Rashomon, a film that if you watch it, looks to be made quite simple, but has many interesting things and ideas behind it. Rashomon is a 1950 jidaigeki film in which the story presents a crime, an assault that ends with a murder. The story is set in the Heian era near Kyoto and presents the context in which all the participants who are part of the murder are telling their story differently, presenting themselves as the victim or the hero in the whole situation. The story of the film is based on the short story In a Grove, written by Ryunosuke Akutagawa, but the name of the film is from another novel that is also written by Akutagawa. The presentation that I did right now is a little confusing, at least for a Western viewer and a fan of cinema at the beginning of his journey. What is important, at least for now, is the context presented, the story of crime told differently by the participants presenting themselves in a positive light for any reason. But let's start with the beginning for the moment. I want to talk about how the story is structured, because one way or another, the film tells the context as a retelling from the perspective of two witnesses. The film begins with two people, a man and a priest who took shelter from the rain under a great gate that is in ruin. They are surprised and are wondering about something, but you can clearly see that there is something that bothers them. Then, another man runs through the rain to take shelter under the gate, and here is the point where the story is starting to unveil the events. The first man is revealed to be the one who found the body of a dead samurai in the forest while he was out to cut wood. From here on, he became a witness to the process and to the unveiling of the murder, along with a priest who saw the couple before the crime. Nothing abnormal until this point. But here is where the film is getting interesting. Each story of the participant is different. The criminal, Tajomaru, is proud of what he did and how he killed the samurai, and how strong the samurai was, and he is proud he killed a skilled warrior. The abused woman is saying that she doesn't know what happened because she fainted of shame of being abused and felt affected by the stare of her husband. She woke up and saw her husband dead, and then she started to wander in the forest. The samurai, through a medium, is telling that Tajomaru wanted the woman to become his wife. The wife accepts, but she wants first for her husband to get killed by Tajomaru, a thing that apparently disgusts the criminal. Then the criminal sets free the samurai and leaves, while later the samurai kills himself in order to save his honor. Those stories are presented differently and present each participant in a different light, with each and every one of them trying to appear a victim or more important than it could be. Due to those contradictory stories, the woodcutter and the priest are asking apparently the why question. Why would someone do that? Why would someone see its own interest and lie? The film presents this question in a very interesting way by presenting a no-win situation. Kurosawa tries to present those questions between the stories, raising more questions regarding the whole context. What is interesting is the role of those three men from under the gate. You have a man who is a woodcutter, who is apparently an honest man who tries to make a living. Then you have the priest, who is the religious and more faithful part, who tries to understand in a way the answers to everything he experienced and heard. And you have the man who just show up out of nowhere, who is not that quite interested into the context and is just for himself, who wants to hear the story just to pass the time. I think, and this is my take, I think that those three men are in a way the answer Kurosawa is making to all those questions created by the stories of the crime. One way or another, those three men represent a part of the answer of all those why questions, presenting in a way an answer with a sour taste, but with a little flavor of hope after all. It is quite interesting how Kurosawa is ending the arc of those questions by presenting another story, apparently the true perspective of the events. Apparently the woodcutter was a witness to the whole crime and saw what happened. He saw the battle between the samurai and Tajomaru being not that epic as it was presented. The conflict between them was ignited by the woman who apparently kinda let herself being abused in order to escape her life with the samurai, and the samurai wasn't that honorable and a self-sacrificing hero, being more presented as a coward and a conceited person. There is, however, something that is like an element that makes no sense, and that's the knife of the woman. Apparently no one knows what happened with the knife, being presumed it is lost somewhere in the forest, but here is the concept that defines the answers to all those questions. Right after the stories are told, the three men find an infant abandoned under the gate. The traveler steals the kimono under the baby, beginning a conflict with the woodcutter, while the priest, protective over the child, is affected by the whole context. The woodcutter is trying to reason with the traveler, but the traveler says that everyone is for himself, no matter what, bringing back the knife into discussion. It is implied that the woodcutter took the knife from the forest and sold it for money, and implied that the woodcutter lied also during the investigation of the crime to protect himself. He made this supposition that no one cares but for itself, no matter the context. And here is where Kurosawa is telling you an interesting story through the actions of the characters. The woodcutter offers to take care of the child. He already has 6 children, one more won't matter. The priest is surprised by this offer and tells the woodcutter that his faith in humanity is restored. This is the moment when Kurosawa is answering the viewer's question. The woodcutter does not deny the whole context with the knife. It can be seen he is ashamed a bit by that. However, it is implied he may have stolen the knife and sold it, but he did it for his children, and probably he lied during the investigation for the exact same reason. So it can be interpreted as a bad thing, but with good reasons. The mystery of the crime remains a mystery, with facts that Tajomaru killed the samurai, but the main plot of the film is taken by the woodcutter in the end. He wasn't selfish after all, to be more important, he was forced to do it. The way Kurosawa is presenting this story is simple, but it has a more emotional and metaphoric meaning than it seems. If you take the story as it is just about 3 men who are talking about a crime where everyone is lying. But here is where the characters' reactions enter into discussion and makes the story a lesson with a bit of hope for a happy ending. The story is one regarding selfishness. It is not about who is right or wrong. It is about who has to do the right thing. In my opinion, Kurosawa presented the context with the infant exactly to bring the questions on a level when anyone can relate to something that is pure and innocent. How Kurosawa structured the story of the film is quite interesting because, from what I have read, the short stories are presenting the same themes, so the film is structured to combine those stories. However, if you read the stories, there are different answers to the questions there on paper. But combining those stories and changing them, Kurosawa is trying to, give hope to the viewer. He is trying to teach him that not everyone is out there for himself. Probably this message is a result of the time period the film was made. I don't know that. Probably there are some social messages out there regarding the historical context of Japan from the late 1940s, and I heard that there are some critical theories regarding this that are debunked by the release date of the novels. But putting the stories on one side and the film on the other side, there are clearly differences. So yeah, probably Kurosawa wanted to give a hopeful end to the story, or not, due to the historical context, but as the film is in the end, I think he made a good choice. Somehow, the film would have worked with a bad ending, but it wouldn't have the same impact, because it would confirm that everyone is for itself. But as the film is with this concept, in a way, I can resonate more with the theme of the film. While I watched the film and paid attention to what was happening, I couldn't but feel a similarity with the kabuki theater from time to time. I mean, it is expected for a 1950s film to be more theatrical than a film made today. But there is something to the Japanese cinema that makes the movie more personal a bit. I do not know how to explain it, but I can sense that from the way it is filmed, Kurosawa is putting the viewer to read and to connect with the characters more personally. More recent films and even today's films, yes, they are using close shots to make the character be closer to the viewer and make the character's reactions more important. But the way Kurosawa is presenting his characters, it clearly reminds me of theater, and it clearly gives me a feeling of a more personal approach to them somehow. Probably this sensation is also due to the fact that from the point of view of cinematography, The film is made with long shots, so in a way it is intended to give the viewer this sensation of theater play, but also he lets the characters to evolve and react, letting the viewer to see their reactions and to see the whole context, as it is presented in a theater play. It may look like the film was made to be a simple film, but it definitely is not. Kurosawa presents the atmosphere of the film in a way that is quite interesting, and I like that he differentiates the moment of the crime with the discussion of the man beneath the gate. It is interesting to hear and to see that heavy rain falling down while the three men are talking about why the men are selfish and will do anything for themselves. It adds a more serious tone to the whole context somehow. What I truly like about this film is how the actors' performances are guiding the story to the final moment. The film has a lot of moments when the characters talk, but the way the actors are performing and how the story is performed, I think that in my opinion, this is what makes the film interesting. The viewer is a witness to the whole story, and seeing how the characters are reacting depending on the story makes it more interesting. Probably this is a reason too for that sensation regarding theater, but nonetheless, I truly feel the connection and their overreaction with the film when I'm watching it. As for the soundtrack of the film, it is interesting how Kurosawa is using the sound in a way to create an interesting atmosphere of the film. As I said earlier, the way he is using the rain to create a heavy and serious feeling during the scenes of the gate is quite a way to put the viewer into a certain vibe. Hearing the sound of that rain falling down, it clearly makes the viewer feel the pressure of the context. The use of songs during the presentation of the woodcutter walking through the forest is quite interesting because it guides the viewer through the event. It's starting as a story with a woodcutter through the forest walking and being happy, trying to do his work, and after that, silence, cause you're gonna find out what is gonna happen. The fact that Kurosawa left the moments without songs is truly perfect because it does not drive the viewer's attention somehow. It makes the viewer be there into the story without distraction, and it can sense the tension much better and realize what is necessary to understand what type of characters are presented on the silver screen. From a cinematographic point of view, Rashomon is one of the movies that can be a study when it comes to the way a film is constructed. It presents interest and mystery from the first moments of the film. It presents in a unique way what it has to present in a style that is quite easy to visualize, and it definitely, through the way it is filmed, it presents a story in a fantastic way, thus making the viewer to accept the convention of the film from the first moments of the story. I am part of the Western audience of this movie. I do not understand too much about the story, only the main line of the film regarding the crime and the metaphor behind the context. But even if the film is not directed to me, there is something that makes me want to explore this part of cinema. No, I do not consider the film to be exotic, a thing that many people say regarding foreign films that may look or feel different than what films they are used to see. I consider the film as a story that is told in a unique way, and I was trying to understand why the film presented a certain historical period and why it was named Rashomon. Knowing some small pieces of information regarding how the Japanese culture is understanding and presenting elements for their audience, I tried to see if I can understand, as a foreigner, the elements behind what is filmed. I started to research a bit and I started to understand some things. The film does not tell you where exactly the story takes place. It just shows you the gate destroyed, presenting during the introduction credits as background pieces of the destroyed place. For a foreigner, the story takes place under a destroyed gate, but for a Japanese viewer, Kurosawa is telling more through this. He is telling you the story takes place near Kyoto because the gate Rashomon was located many centuries ago near Kyoto. I like this small work Kurosawa is making with the viewer. He doesn't need to tell you directly something, he gives you a hint, so it is up for the viewer to understand. Many film directors used this method. They showed you something and made the viewer realize for itself using its own knowledge. The technique was widely used back in the silent film era, but more recent film directors use this method to tell more to their viewers about the film. So showing a gate and telling you the name of the film, Kurosawa places you in the time and the location of the story without any preparations, which is an interesting method of storytelling for a film. As for why the film is set in the Heian period, I tried to read and to understand the reason behind it. Like with the location, the film doesn't tell you when it takes place. It's presenting this detail through the context on the screen, presenting an uncontrollable situation through the way the investigation is held. The film presents elements and ideas regarding the fall of the Heian period, a historical time when Chinese culture was losing influence and control over Japan. I also read that the late Heian period was used to compare the historical time Japan had in the late 1940s, but probably this is just a theory or a coincidence. Or that's how Kurosawa wanted to make the film. Still, with all those theories regarding the message of the film, Kurosawa created a story with a very subtle and direct metaphor. And probably it is like a mirror of the time the film was made, or not, but if the film makes you to think all those things and makes you want to understand more and more about it, then the film was made in a way the only way you can say about it is, that is brilliant. Rashomon is a film that became quite popular in the Western world. It presented a story that is interesting and made in a way that is simple when in fact it has a deeper meaning. Probably due to the Western popularity, Kurosawa got to be known as the most European Japanese film director. What is nice, at least to me, was to see actors like Toshiro Mifune and Takashi Shimura, who today are quite known for their work with Akira Kurosawa, and it is impossible when you talk about one of them to not talk about the others. To see them and Kurosawa's movies is like seeing a great mix of actors who are working with a great director to create a great film. And yes, it was interesting to see their work in one of Kurosawa's films. It makes the viewer feel like a young and ecstatic fan, making them want to watch more movies made by Kurosawa with Mifune or Shimura. Another thing, Rashomon was so influential that the concept of storytelling that is based on the way the story of the film is became known as the Rashomon concept. So it can be seen that on many levels, Rashomon is a very important part in the history of cinema. Maybe it's an old movie, maybe it is a foreign movie for many of us, but I cannot close my eyes on that. To me, Rashomon is a great lesson in the art of filmmaking and the art of storytelling. Akira Kurosawa's genius had to work with few elements, but it worked well and created a masterpiece. I quite love to rewatch the film and re-experience it. It's nice from time to time to go to the basics and enjoy a simpler story. Yeah, I think I can say that. It's a simple film, yet great, and you have a lot to learn from it. And at the same time, it is quite relaxing. Now, after watching this film again, I wonder, what should I watch next?